And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com. Dan Strafford, Dave Lochran along with you to talk about a 5-game NBA slate here on New Year's Eve. As always, my PSA, and whoever doesn't want to hear it, deal with it. Don't do anything stupid. It's amateur hour on New Year's Eve. Be smart. Uber, Lyft, cab. Stay home. Drink your face off at home. But anyway, Dave, how you doing? New Year's Eve is upon us. 2019 is around the corner. We have a 5-game NBA slate.
Yes, sir. I'm doing well. It's a very, very, very good day for me, I must say. Oh wow, what a day! What a day, man! The Eagles get the win. The Vikings lose by 14 points at home to the Chicago Bears. I can't help but think, and look, if you're a Vikings fan, don't hate me, but I can't help but think the Vikings fans, hated the Eagles and the Eagles fans before, but they must really hate the Eagles after Sunday.
I would think so.
Right? I mean, they have to.
Yeah.
Because honestly, man, I thought we were cooked. Now, I'm a pessimist at heart. I'm just a miserable.
Yes, you are. Yes.
I have no hope. There's no chance. It makes it easier when we don't win. And then when we do, it's just.
You'd make a great Jets fan.
Yeah. Come to Philly, dude. It makes things so much better when you actually do win. So there's that. And we're in the playoffs. Do I think the Eagles have a shot to go all the way? Look, it's unlikely, but they're playing really well right now. And it's just fun to have a team that you root for playing past the regular season, even if it's 1 or 2 weeks. It's a lot of fun, and you have to kind of cherish it, embrace it, and enjoy every moment of it when it's here.
Yep. Enjoy it. Enjoy it while it lasts. Especially, like, it's funny. You do the shows over on Sirius. I do a show on fantasy, so we talk football a lot, and we talk about fantasy football. But you have to remember the real world results. And I did the quick. What was the last Super Bowl winning team to not make the playoffs? And you'd assume it'd be a long time ago, right? Dominant teams or best teams. It was 2015. It was the Broncos. Like, it happens a lot in the NFL.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What about before that? Do you know, by any chance?
I didn't look further than that, but it's happened recent enough, and a lot of times it does happen where the losing team doesn't make the playoffs. Like, that's actually a harbinger of doom for a lot of teams when they don't win the Super Bowl. They end up dropping well off the grid when it comes to the following season. But I just find it funny how parity-based the NFL is, and putting the Patriots aside and what they've done year over year. Atlanta Bravesian of them, but. Congrats to you and yours. I will hang my hopes on the fact that the Jets have a franchise quarterback in Sam Darnold. I will also say that before the season started, I was on record saying I may become a Cleveland Browns fan. I still feel that is a good way to go with Baker Mayfield there. 7-8-1 on the year. I have a standing bet with Andrew. You may know him as Hot Magic. That the Browns will make the playoffs next year. Small bet. But I'm on that the Browns will make it. He said no way. So straight up playoffs or bust bet. So I'm buying the futures of the Browns. Should probably actually look at that.
I like it.
Betting.
I'm actually with you. Oh no, I'm with you on this. I bought the future of the Browns before the season started.
Yeah,
Andrew
exactly.
and I made a bet.
Oh, did you? So I think we were on the same. I think we were at the same time. He might have been feeling saucy at that point.
Yeah, mine was. I don't know if it was 6.5 wins or 7 wins.
Yep.
I'm not sure. Man, that game today, though, just look, they lost. It was a really, really, really filthy interception to seal that game, right? Like, should Baker Mayfield have thrown it? I don't know. I don't think it was that terrible of a throw. It was. I mean, that's a very difficult interception. And the way I see it, man, is that generally speaking, all in all, you got to take some risks. And if you go back and watch that, C.J. Mosley made a beautiful, beautiful pick, and they were moving the ball downfield. But Baker Mayfield has played really well. I will say his receivers made some ridiculous catches all game long. They're set up for the future. They look good. I had them. I think I had them going 500 this year. So what? I was half a game off. Would they go 6-8-1 or 7-8-1?
Yep.
7-8-1. So half a game off. I'm okay with that. No, dude, to say that this team doesn't have a bright future, I think is kind of crazy, especially given that the AFC is not that strong, right?
Right.
And then we can move on after this or whatever you want to say, but I'll stop talking. Like, I think you're right. The Jets and Darnold have a guy that they can build around. I love Josh Allen. I played him everywhere yesterday, which is why I like him a lot more. But I still think the kid's got talent. But really, the Bills still have a ways to go before they're very good. The Jets, the Dolphins, the Broncos are going to rebuild, or at least have a ways to go at quarterback. The Raiders, oh my God. The Bengals, who the hell knows what's going on with them? And then what's going on with the Jags? The Titans are mediocre. Yes, the Browns could easily sneak in as a 6th seed, as a wild card next year. They're not winning their division. You know what? Maybe they will, but I think the Steelers will probably blow less late game leads than they did this year. To think that the Steelers blew that many games and almost lost today as 14-point favorites is one of the craziest stories of the season.
Yep. Steelers had a rough go for a good amount of their late game action. I don't know. Roethlisberger, another year older. Brady obviously showing us that quarterbacks can play late into their career, but I think the AFC is wide open. That's why I like the Browns a lot next year. So we'll take the look and see if I can find a nice bet, maybe on a MyBookie or a Bovada or something for futures when I can. But
you should, by the way.
I think that's
depending on what the odd. Not if it's
right,
even money, but
if the Browns are even money, then the world's
exactly
on much further off access than I need to
exactly.
All right,
then don't take that bet.
Right, that is a very, very good point. We will talk NBA now, and as always, appreciate you guys listening. Don't forget, if you use the promo code EARLYBIRD, you can get 1 week free over at awesemo.com. That gets you everything, so you can get a look under the hood, understand how the site works, get a look at Dave's writing, Adam's writing of the deep dive, Monday, Wednesday, Friday for Lofty, and then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday for Adam. You get the projections, you get the rankings, you get all the inner workings of awesemo.com with that 1 week, and then you do have to cancel during that week if you don't want to stay. If you do want to stay, just let the subscription then take hold from the monthly or yearly perspective. There are other deals. If you watch some of the videos over on YouTube, all of them have promo code as well. So stay tuned for those Monday morning NBA strategy show. Josh is lead on that, and you get Lofty and Adam rotating in as the analysis side of that. So we have a 5-game slate with some of the better stars on it, where you have Anthony Davis, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry. Then you get Paul George. You have Karl Anthony Towns coming off a gigantic game on Sunday night. Put up, 87 DraftKings points or somewhere around there. Nearly had a 5x5 game. I think he fell 2 steals shy of the 5x5.
Who's that?
Karl Anthony Towns. An absolutely monster game, and that comes after a 70-point outing back on the 28th. So he's got the mojo rolling right now with a matchup coming up against Anthony Davis and New Orleans. We'll go position by position as always, but any injuries here, Dave? I know there are a lot of Q tags. We have the Minnesota Timberwolves with a couple of guards that have been injured. You have Devin Booker, who's nicked up a little bit. I know Chris Paul remains out. What injuries are top of your list for what will be important come time Monday at lock?
Yeah, so just so we're clear on this, 5 games should make it a little bit less sketchy as we draw closer to lock. I mean, last week was pretty wild with a lot of these injuries, right? But Jeff Teague and Derrick Rose are both questionable. So that could open, if both of them sit, that could open up a lot, right? If Teague sits, then, obviously you're getting Rose at, a price tag that he's been around recently, which is, decent price, 6,700, really good matchup. I'll talk about him in just a minute. I would love Rose if Teague is out here, but, and assuming he's not limited, but we'll see, because that's a real good matchup. The New Orleans backcourt defense and overall defense has really struggled this year. I mean, they've taken a huge step backwards. Devin Booker, questionable with that lower back injury. I think it's a contusion. Yeah, lower back contusion. So we'll see what goes on there. That's a home game against Golden State. I mean, hell, if he's out, that game will likely be over before it starts. Right now, Warriors are 10-point favorites. We do have a line. My guess is that Booker should be expected to play, but we'll see. Mirotic remains out. Wesley Matthews questionable. Anything else important here? You already talked about Chris Paul, but Dwayne Dedmon is doubtful here. And Dwayne Dedmon's been real good to us lately. For those of you that listen to the pod, that read the deep dive, that listen to that watch the deeper dive, we've been pretty heavy on Dedmon lately, and he's been pretty fantastic. But I believe there are 2 early games, right?
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
There's 2 early games. We're not going to go over those. They will have slates for those. Dedmon is in that one. It'll free up some value. But aside from that, yeah, Indy at home against Atlanta, and then Charlotte hosting Orlando. Those are the 2 early games.
Yep. And we have the 5 late games or main slate, as it were, which is Memphis, Houston, Boston, San Antonio, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Minnesota, New Orleans, and Golden State, Phoenix. And Golden State Phoenix is last to tip at 9 p.m. I think NBA rightly cognizant of New Year's here, getting everybody home or at least out of their venues before anywhere near midnight to get them home safely, hopefully before the ball drops in their time zone. Let's go to point guard first, where at the top end, we're going to have to make some decisions where Westbrook and Harden are above 11K. You drop below 10K for Curry and Kyrie, 9.6 for Steph. 8,900 on DK for Kyrie Irving, Drew Holiday, Mike Conley, and then you drop all the way down to Schroeder. And yeah, it's a 5-game slate, but you drop quickly down to the mid-tier, if not lower mid-tier, before you even start to scroll over there on DraftKings. How do you feel about Westbrook? I assume we can leave Harden for shooting guard. How do you feel about Westbrook in this matchup with Dallas, and what other parts of point guard do you find intriguing?
I got to tell you. Oh, by the way, Rudy Gay's questionable. Keep an eye on that. Got a sore left wrist. That could open some things up as well. San Antonio at home against Boston. So not a good matchup. But I'll tell you what, I've been harping on Westbrook shooting and, dug into it. And coming from last year, not even this year, we find that the free throw shooting, ever since they changed the rules for the delay of game, not being able to walk behind the 3-point line, has really messed him up. He even said it himself last year, but it's gotten even worse this year. And he's taking less free throws. So I don't know exactly what to explain that one. But upon some further digging, one thing I noticed was that Russell Westbrook, when he drives to the rack and gets shots at the rim, he is as dominant as anybody as a scorer, right? When he is resorting to a lot of jump shots, he's far less potent, right? It's true. He's actually taking 40% of his shots at the rim this year, which is more than he's taken throughout his entire career outside of his rookie season. And he's shooting, where is it? He's shooting, 64% at the rim, which is the best of his career. So here's what I'll say about Russell Westbrook. Knowing that that's the case, that 40% of his shots are coming at the rim within 3 feet, and he's shooting almost 65% at the rim, best of his career and highest mark of his career outside of his rookie season. This tells me that we should absolutely see his scoring totals rise. I don't want to say dramatically, but steadily going forward. He took 29 shots against Phoenix. I get it. Paul George was out, but still, if you watched that game, he was living at the rim. And he was knocking down all of them. Sure, he shot 3 of 7 for 3, and he's really struggled from 3-point range this year, and he's taking more threes than he did last year. But I really like that. And I'm putting Westbrook back in play today because we know George is playing. This isn't going to be a top option of mine, but I still think this is a spot where Westbrook can do a ton of damage. Not to mention, Dallas has struggled mightily on the road this season, opposed to at home. And I think they're definitely starting to come back down to earth. There's nothing about this backcourt defense that concerns me at all. So, yeah, I like Westbrook. Is he my top play? Well, it's hard to say. We'll talk about Harden here, too, because it only makes sense. Harden's a monster. Seriously, I love Russell Westbrook, but Harden's a better overall player than Westbrook. Yep. Westbrook's no doubt the most athletically gifted, like the most freakish athlete in the league, along with Giannis, maybe Anthony Davis, right? but we're talking about a guy that can jump out of the gym, that can do everything, that is averaging almost 11 rebounds per game as a point guard, is averaging a triple-double again this year. Could be the third straight season that he's averaged a triple-double. It's insane. But, as an overall player, as an overall shooter, James Harden is the more reliable scorer. And we have seen that, whether Chris Paul's healthy or not. But when Chris Paul's out, you're getting like almost 40 minutes a game from James Harden on average, right? And he's just dominant. Even if he struggles shooting, like against Boston, he went ice cold in the second half. Dan, he made 2 shots all game that weren't 3-pointers in that game. 2, right? And he still had 60 fantasy points against Boston. I know it's Memphis. I get that. But he faced Memphis on the 15th and had 70 fantasy points.
Yep.
And a triple-double. He's very capable of putting up monster numbers against whoever he faces. So I'm not ruling Harden out just because he has a tough matchup. No, 40 minutes without Chris Paul and like 1 3/4 fantasy points per minute is just too much to say, well, the matchup's too tough for, a top 3 player in the entire league. So yes, that's where I'm at there. I still like Harden. I like Westbrook. As of now, I think I'm going to play the ownership game here because I do see Westbrook having a really nice floor and ceiling here. But I don't know. I'll ask you, and then we can move on throughout the position. It just feels like the role that Harden's playing right now with Chris Paul off, it's really hard to fade him no matter who he's playing because it feels like he needs to have the worst night of his life to not give you 60 fantasy points.
Right. To just be like to break something, like to have an injury that is so catastrophic that he can't be back out on the court.
He had 45 points against Boston, real points. And if you watch the second half, he lost all the magic. But he still shot 9 for 18 from 3.
Right.
Look, so Chris Paul, when was Chris Paul's last game? Let me tell you right now. So Chris Paul last played on the 20th. Since then, James Harden, so he's played 1, 2, 3, 4 games. Want to hear what his 3-point attempts are? I'm going to tell you. 19, 16, 18, and 17.
Right.
3-pointers.
How many games? Do we know how many games Paul's been out? 5? Is that how many?
4. He's been out since the 20. Or the last game he played was the 20th.
All right, hold. I need to check something here. I feeling this is 40 plus, right? So Harden's usage.
Oh, actually, if you want to use the 20th as well, because Paul only played 12 minutes in that game, but you don't need to.
Well, yeah, Harden's usage over those 5 games is 41.6%.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Across like 40 minutes per game.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and the Rockets are 4-1. Not that, wins and losses, I'm not citing as a reason to play or not play him, but he is carrying the team right now.
Yep. And he will slow down. He'll slow towards the end of the season. If this keeps up, doesn't matter how good you are, how athletic and how fit you are and how conditioned, you will slow down. We've seen it in the playoffs with Harden, but right now, heading into 2019, still relatively early in the year, that's not a concern.
Nope. And ride that train. Ride it while it's going on and while Paul's out. What else do you have at point guard? There are some other options you already talked about. If Teague is out, what do you get with Rose? I know Tyus Jones had a decent game on Sunday. If both happen to be out on Monday, he could be a cheaper option at point guard at $5K flat on DraftKings. Are there other names you are at least somewhat confident in writing up for Monday's deep dive?
Yeah, I did, just to mention it one more time, I really think Rose would be a great play here. He's only $6,700 on DraftKings. His price has come down. And something I've been trying to emphasize lately is that Rose is playing. So Rose played 38 minutes against Chicago and then 39 minutes against Atlanta. I believe that Atlanta game went to overtime. Did that game go to overtime as well? Not as well, but did that game go to overtime? I can't remember. It's honestly, it's almost unimportant because that's not even the point. The point is that, and yes, it did go to overtime. The point is that Tom Thibodeau doesn't care about his injury history or his checkered injury past or none of that. He's giving Derrick Rose big minutes, and in a close regulation game, I'm expecting Rose to play 33, 34 minutes.
Yep.
And at that price tag, he leads the league in usage since Jimmy Butler departed. It's just a really good spot and a good matchup. And quite frankly, Drew Holiday's defense has taken a significant step back this year. So yes, I definitely like Derrick Rose if he plays. We have to wait and see what's going on with the ankle. And he didn't play yesterday or on Sunday, which would also make it interesting because if he does play, the rest of the team is playing their second of a back-to-back. That would make it more interesting. I think it's very possible that he sits though. And if that is the case and Rose sits and Teague plays at 5,800, well, then he's going to be in play as well. If both of them sit, because keep this in mind, all of these are like actual possibilities. If both of them sit, the question is whether or not you want to pay for Tyus Jones. He's up to $5K on DraftKings. I guess they preemptively priced him here based on these two guys being out. I kind of don't like that, but whatever. It doesn't matter. He'd have been super chalk anyway. 4,500 on FanDuel, though. Totally different story. If that's the case and you get Jones at 4,500 on FanDuel, I think he's definitely got to be in play. And then Okoji's not someone I like, a low usage guy, but I'll just toss him out there. Shooting guard eligible. He's 3,800, much cheaper. Jones would be the guy. He's the guy I would expect to start, of course, because you're not starting Wiggins at the 1. So that's pretty much that's your backcourt situation right now for Minnesota, and it's one that we're going to want to follow very closely. I also like Drew Holiday on the other side of this, Dan. His price has come down. Now, not on FanDuel where he's shooting guard eligible only, and anyway, but on DraftKings, Drew Holiday is 8,500. This has got to be the cheapest he's been in a little while. Back mid-December. I like this spot for him, even with Davis and Randall healthy. He's dropped 40-plus fantasy points in 6 straight games with, not just 40. You got a 59, a 46, a 45, a 44, 42, 44. He's such a talented player, man, and he's giving you very consistent production. Actually, over his last 10, he has one game with under 39 fantasy points and 2 under 40. One had 39. Holiday's too cheap for me in this spot. In a good matchup, what I expect to be a very high-scoring game. We don't have the total or the spread yet based on some of these injury concerns. But, it's a position that I feel pretty decent about right now. The injuries could definitely shake that up, no question. But that's where we're at right now. Kyrie Irving you can throw into the mix. I think I like Holiday a little bit more, especially in cash. I'm cool with Holiday in tournaments. I'm cool with Irving in tournaments. I prefer Holiday in cash. Is there anyone else here before we move on? Elfrid Payton's probable, by the way. Not sure if that puts a huge dent in things, but he's expected to play.
Are we getting enough?
We'll save the rest for the deep dive.
Well, are we getting enough minutes from Austin Rivers to see some upside, or is this matchup with Memphis just too putrid for?
Yeah, we are getting enough minutes from Austin Rivers to see some upside if he wasn't almost $5,000.
Sure.
To me, that is strictly prohibited. I can't do that. 3,800 on FanDuel is a bit of a different story. With Rivers, I'm willing to factor matchup in, but I don't care about the matchup for players, even if you're not great, as long as you're cheap enough and as long as you're getting enough minutes, right? And as long as you're at least taking enough shots. He has 10 assists over his last 2 games. He's getting up, around 8-10 shots a night. If you're getting Rivers $300 above minimum salary, shooting guard eligible on FanDuel, I don't have an issue with it. But there's no way you could convince me to pay almost $5K for Rivers against Memphis. Even with the minutes, I think your average fantasy output from him is going to be around 20 fantasy points, and that's not going to get it done.
All right, let's make that move to shooting guard, 5-game slate. We can move pretty quickly here as MPE starts to trickle down through the positions. We do at the top end have Harden and Curry, Drew Holiday, Devin Booker. You do get DeRozan, Luka Doncic. I don't know if you saw Doncic, and I wouldn't say necessarily put Paul George on skates, but he did a good job of getting Paul George turned around on the matchup with the Oklahoma City Thunder on Sunday night. So if you have an opportunity to go out and check out NBA.com, I think it was NBA.com's feed over there on Twitter, he basically hit him with a stutter step and a delay, and George went for it, and he was able to then go in for the easy left-handed layup. But as we talk through multi-position eligibility, we talk through shooting guard. You do have DeRozan and Doncic both introduced here. Klay Thompson is your first solely shooting guard eligible player, 6,200 on DraftKings. Then we get into likes of Andrew Wiggins, who had some choice words about the Minnesota Timberwolves fan base, saying, and I quote, "We have some shitty fans." But
Is that what he said?
yeah, he said, well, I mean, it was a larger context. Was they got booed off the court, and he was asked about it, and he said, well, we got some shitty fans, we got some great fans, that's just how it is. But he led with, we have some shitty fans. He led with
smart. Yeah, not smart.
Exactly right. But. Exactly, when you can pull the quote out of, we have some shitty fans. Like, you're giving blogs and Twitter and all the different things way too much fodder there to discuss. But shooting guard has pieces, obviously, when you have Harden at the top. So if we have a point guard we like a little bit better, we can make Harden shooting guard eligible. Well, we don't make him. He is shooting guard eligible. What do you got here? What do you see from SG, and who are some of the names you think will fall in line to be written up on the deep dive?
Yeah, by the way, you're right. When it comes to Jokic, Doncic, there is no question. I think he could stop playing today, and even if he isn't qualified to play enough games, he should still win the MV or the Rookie of the Year.
Yep.
Like, that's just how good this kid's been. He's been stupendous. I don't really understand how you can. I don't understand how you can look at any other rookie, and there have been some decent ones, and think that they can even hold a candle to Doncic with the way he's played. The fact that this team, is actually right around playoff positioning, not that they're going to finish in the playoff or make the playoffs, but even around that says enough about how well he's played. Because who else do they really have, right? Who else do they really have there that's going to put points on the board?
Right.
To me, it's really impressive. Wiggins, though, if Teague and Rose are both out, that's going to open things up. I mean, Rose, even if just Rose is out, Wiggins is cheap enough to where it's kind of interesting because Rose is a pretty high usage guy, right? Like Rose, we know that he's been good this year, but I think sometimes we forget that he has been the highest usage player on a team. So that to me is a big deal. Wiggins this season, if you take Derrick Rose and Jeff Teague off the court, he has to be more impressive. I mean, I get it. He hasn't been very good, but man, he's got to be at least half decent. So 176 minutes, 29.5% usage rate, and 1.08 fantasy points per minute. His minutes are also going to tick up considerably in a spot like this. So, and he's already playing good minutes with either one of Teague or Rose out. I don't like playing Wiggins. It's tough. Nobody likes playing Wiggins. But he actually had one of his better games against New Orleans earlier this season. Not that it's saying much, but it is saying that this is a spot where if these guys are even, preferably Rose, not if just Teague is out, I don't want to touch Wiggins. If Rose is out, that's a different story. If both of them are out, I really think Wiggins becomes a very viable play here. So he's cheap enough to like. Devin Booker, also against Golden State. I just love the kid, and I love that. Well, obviously he has to play, but even if they're 10-point dogs, if Wiggins plays, I think Phoenix will at least stick around long enough for Booker to get his minutes in, and that's really all I care about here, right? He's a super high upside player at 8,300. It's just too cheap of a price tag. That's what it all boils down to. You're getting a Warriors team that isn't playing at the same elevated pace that we've seen in recent seasons, but they're still a top 10 pace team, right? This team still plays at a top 10 pace, and that's really all I care about. I think Booker has excellent upside in this spot, assuming he plays and isn't limited. I don't want to hear that he'll test it out and he could be limited. None of that crap. But yeah, if Wiggins or if Booker, I'm all mixed up today. I'm still stoked from this Eagles win. If Booker comes back and he's not limited at all, I'm on board. Obviously, Curry, I could have mentioned him at the point, but Curry's in play. I don't know how easy it's going to be to fit him with a bunch of top shelf guys at that 11K range, but there's a ceiling to be had here, no question. We saw Russell Westbrook absolutely decimate them the other day. Of course, George was off the court, and Curry will still have Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant. But that does lead me to Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson is again in the midst of another shooting slump. Do you remember what happened when people started talking at length about his shooting slump? Yeah, he broke out in a huge way. Now, maybe this game against Portland on Saturday was a sign of things to come. 32 points on 12 for 21 shooting, 4 or 5 from 3. But Klay Thompson is cheap. I mean, his price point is at $6,200 on DraftKings. He's facing one of the worst backcourt defenses in the entire league. This is a good tournament spot. Really good. Also, and we'll move on to small forward here, but keep this in mind. If, say, Teague and Rose are both out, I think Wiggins will become a pretty popular option. And if that happens to be the case, I feel like Klay Thompson will be one of the greatest pivots on the night at a $300 price difference on DraftKings. There's no doubt. Like even with those two guys out for Minnesota, the chances that Klay Thompson produces more fantasy points than Wiggins are still pretty high. And that's why I like him a lot as a pivot if that's what it comes down to.
Oh, yeah, it would feel like the bust rate. If Rose and Teague are both out and Wiggins is on a 5-game slate, 35 to 45%. Like, it's going to be a large ownership there that will shift to Wiggins in that matchup. The bust rate's pretty high, and I like the Klay Thompson pivot pretty distinctly here. 6,200. We've seen Klay go nuclear before. He's had back-to-back good outings, and it feels like a spot where he could put up gigantic numbers. Now, obviously, the Golden State offense, anybody can, and that's just the way this slate's going to be. Having to hone in on some high upside GPP plays, and Thompson probably amongst the best. As you look at it. Let's go small forward, and we'll power through here. Durant, George, DeRozan, Doncic, TJ Warren, Bob Cove is eligible here at 6,500. Had a big game. Was it 2 game? No, last game out. I luckily rostered him at single-digit ownership, which was nice to have on a slate where I did not do a good job with roster construction. Wiggins eligible here as well, obviously. Then we get to Harry Barnes, and on we go. To the mid-tier and lower tier, the likes of E'Twaun Moore and Kelly Oubre. What do you got? Do you like Durant or George? Do you find this sort of a mid-tier sort of night for small forward?
Well, I don't know if, first of all, Kevin Durant, man, that was not the greatest performance the other day, I must say. Coming off a triple-double against the same team. He shot 10 of 19, not a bad shooting performance. He only attempted 1 3 and missed it. But just on the night, he wasn't there, right? It just seemed like he wasn't with it. He had 2 rebounds and 5 assists. I don't know. It seemed like Durant just wasn't with it. I still don't hate him against Phoenix. I'm not pairing him with Curry, but I don't hate the idea of like a Curry Thompson or Durant Thompson, or even just one of them. Because to me, not that I'm saying anything that anyone wouldn't think anyway, but it feels like in this spot, one of these Warriors, even if it blows out, has to have themselves a really big game. Usually if you're going to blow a team out super early, even the Warriors are going to need someone to have a pretty big game early on. And it could certainly be Durant. It could be Curry. It could even be Klay Thompson, which is why I like him. But aside from that, I don't know how you're going to pay up here. It's tough. Doncic facing OKC with Dennis Smith Jr. back. And he still had a nice game. He still had a 42.5 fantasy points with Smith Jr. back in the lineup last time out. And Dennis Smith returned and played 30 minutes. So it's not like he wasn't around. He played most of that game. I just don't think I don't think you need to get to Doncic here. There are plenty of mid-range guys, and it's a matchup where, while I think he's really good and I could talk about him for a while, I'm probably going to look elsewhere. The question, Dan, is where else do we go?
Right.
There aren't that many places to go. If you can get Paul George at a discount, I'm perfectly fine with that. 94 on DraftKings is okay, but I'd probably just go to a $9,700 Durant and call it a day. But there's not a ton of value. That's why I mentioned Okogie earlier. If Teague and Rose are both out, then I think you can consider him. Hope for 28 minutes. Hope for 25 fantasy points. It's not going to be pretty. It isn't. But at the same time, nothing else at the position is. Gordon Hayward's given us absolutely nothing all season long. Maybe he'll have a good game sometime soon, but I'm not holding my breath. And the rest of the position kind of feels the same way. I don't think we have that much quality value here.
Nope.
And I don't really know where we're going to pay up. What I'm going to hope to do is, on DraftKings, this is why I might have a lot of Wiggins, assuming those guys sit. The reason I keep mentioning it, by the way, is because it's really right now the biggest looming scenario on the entire slate. The reason I would have some Wiggins is he's small forward eligible, and the position just is not good at all. I mean, you might go to a Kyle Anderson or something. I don't really know anywhere I can look to and feel confident. Even Robert Covington's price tag has come up now where you're not going to feel great at that. 6,500 on FanDuel is better than 6,500 on DraftKings, no question. It's just maybe you have someone where you just feel supremely confident in them, but there's not one guy here that I just can't wait to plug into lineups.
All right, let's take that and turn to power forward, which has been a little bit worse off this season for us. You do get AD here at 11.5, but you've already made mention it's going to be tough to get. Maybe it won't be tough, but it will be a little bit of a mission to get multiple five-figure players into the lineups with the way value is not really presenting itself on this slate. You get KD, Paul George, Julius Randle is eligible here, LaMarcus Aldridge, and then you get into the likes of Draymond Green, Jason Tatum is eligible here, and then we make our way quickly into a mid-tier that is lacking a good deal, though you do get Al Horford against San Antonio at 5,700. He's been in the low 20s over the past couple of games. Minutes-wise, San Antonio does give up some height. Well, not some height, but just some skill in the front court. You got to trust Pop all the time, but there are rebounds to be had here. So I don't know if Horford has some upside here at 5,700. But what do you got at power forward, and what are some of the names outside of AD and KD that are making the short list for you?
All right. KD's only making this short list because there's not really a long list to begin with, and it's kind of ugly. But Anthony Davis here against Minnesota, it's a lovely spot. I know a lot of people paired him with Harden the other day. Fortunately, Saturdays are the days where I have the Sirius XM show from 5 to 7 Eastern. So if I play a lineup, I'm scrambling and I'm not playing hardly anything because I can't do the research while I'm on the show, especially when I'm going solo. And I hardly played it all that night. But I know that the Harden AD pairing was popular because the Wizards were on the slate, and it probably didn't kill a lot of people because they went with Satoransky, and they still had Thomas Bryant and Jeff Green, who all had great games. Hell, comparable games to Anthony Davis, who finished with 47 fantasy points. That's not good. That's not enough. He's funny, too, because he's had struggles with Houston throughout his career. Against Minnesota, I really like this matchup. Davis is another one of those guys that's going to play, routinely 38, 40 minutes in regulation. When it comes to these top guys, I can tell you this much. Right now, I haven't decided on which one it's going to be that I'm loading up on. Maybe I'll split it up. But between Davis and Harden, and I will throw Westbrook in there, these are all very, very playable options. Right now, I think I'm going to rank it Harden, Davis, Westbrook. And the only reason Harden is above him because of this matchup that is tough is what you mentioned, with Chris Paul out. By the way, you mentioned that he had a 41% usage rate over the last 5 games. It's not just over those games either, right? If you were to take that back to the start of last season, Harden with Chris Paul off the court has just posted astronomical rates. And as much as I love Davis here, and I will certainly have some Davis, I would have a whole lot more of him, simply put, if Harden wasn't on this slate. Harden has a 40% usage rate, 54% assist rate, a 10% rebounding rate, and 1.68 fantasy points per minute since the start of last season. Last season with Chris Paul off the court. This year, with Chris Paul off the court, he has a 42.5% usage rate, a 53% assist rate, a 9.3% rebounding rate, and 1.76 fantasy points per minute. So there you have it. If Mirotic and Randall were out, we'd be saying the same thing about Davis, whose rates are even crazier than Harden's when those guys are sitting. I like Davis. but it's a tough decision between him and Harden. Julius Randle's price remains below 8K on DraftKings. Keep plugging away, throwing him in the lineups until that changes. He is routinely and nightly underpriced. I don't know how he's still under 8K, Dan. To me, It doesn't make sense. Coming off of 2 strong games, he has easy 50 fantasy point upside. And this is still a guy that, even when Davis is on the court, is hovering around 30% usage with quality rebounding rates, quality per minute rates. I don't know what there isn't to like at this price point. It's pretty much everything to like. Draymond Green is still too cheap. The shooting woes continue, but he generates most of his production outside of scoring anyway. He's definitely an up and down player. There's no question. And he's been in some foul trouble lately, which hasn't helped him. But he's going to get minutes when he's not in foul trouble. And the big game potential is still there. Look, he still has 40-plus fantasy points, or 39-plus in 3 of his last 5. At 6,400, can Draymond give you, 13, 12, and 9 with 3 blocks and 2 steals? Absolutely. And I'm willing to take a shot at that on a 5-game slate. So small power forward isn't nearly as shallow as small forward is. And if you want to get crazy, you do have some cheap guys like Kevon Looney is still very cheap. Not a big ceiling, but he's routinely giving us 20-plus fantasy points each night. If you wanted to find ways to get 2 expensive guys into your lineup, he's there if you need him. Then I think it probably falls off a cliff. You're going to have a tough time finding any solid value. Even in the mid-range, it's not very pretty. And the last guy I'll throw out here, because I still like his ceiling, and I still have seen him getting, well, we all have seen him getting 30-plus minutes, not every night, but once in a while, even with JaMychal Green back and Noah playing, Jaren Jackson down to 5,300. I'm just tossing him out there because if he gets off to a hot start, my guess is that he stays in the game.
All right, we'll close it out with center, where we can start with AD, but rather talk a little bit here about Karl-Anthony Towns and get your take on the rest of the position. Towns on Sunday night had a line that was 12 for 24 from the field, 3 for 6 from three-point range, 7 of 9 from the free throw line. He had 18 rebounds, 34 points. He had 6 blocks, 3 steals, 7 assists. An absolutely monster line for Karl-Anthony Towns, coming off a big line the night, or the game before, I should say, where he had 31 points, 19 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 blocks, and a steal. He has put up big numbers since Jimmy Butler has left. Has a matchup here with New Orleans. You obviously have AD on the other side. Is Karl-Anthony Towns proving his worth, and do you think he is worthy of a 9,300 price tag in this matchup?
Oh, yeah. His price came down after that last game.
Yep.
Yeah, he's definitely worth it, and he's been worth it, right? I mean, Karl-Anthony Towns, since Butler left, he's been up and down at times, but no question, he's been an absolutely stellar player. And you don't get a lot of guys at this price point with 75 fantasy point upside. 9,300 is still very, very reasonable for Karl-Anthony Towns, no question. I think he's going to end up likely being one of my favorite plays on this slate. I don't worry about this whatsoever. About going up against Randall and against Anthony Davis. It's not a big deal. You're playing against one of the fastest paced teams. He's an athletic big. He's going to be able to put work in this spot. I expect it to stay close too. If there was ever a game to go to overtime, it's something like this one. Not saying it will, because predicting overtime is silly, but you get the point. And then outside of that, though, I wish the position was deeper. If we're not talking about multi-position eligibility guys like Davis, like Draymond, like Randall, all of whom we've already talked about, it's not great. And a bunch of these guys are a bit overpriced. DeAndre Jordan stands out to me, not because I like this spot against Steven Adams and OKC. Actually, I don't like it at all, but simply because he's really cheap. Yep. 6,100 here seems pretty wild to me. And OKC is going to run a traditional big center for most of this game, so Jordan should be out there for 30, 35 minutes. It seems like, just even in a bad spot, this is a tough spot for me to ignore. And think of it this way, Dan. You're looking at 6,100, right? DeAndre Jordan on the season is averaging 1.15 fantasy points per minute. You play around 35 minutes in this game, or even 34, you're looking upwards of 40 fantasy points. So, and that's just his per minute So even if you were to lower it and say it gives you 37, that's not bad at this price. He's done it countless times. Actually, recently, his last 8 games, 35, 47, 32, 48, 55, 29, 40, 36. And he does so without having to score much because he's such a dominant rebounder. He kills everybody on the glass. I don't like the spot again, but it doesn't really matter when a guy's cheap enough and expected to play. Look, you're a better team when DeAndre Jordan's on the floor. You're a better defensive team, a better rebounding team. I don't see much reason not to play him. That's too good of a price.
Anything else you want to cover off on this slate before I ask you our final question of the podcast?
I think we're good for now. We'll have the deep dive taken care of and patch up any holes that we've missed throughout the podcast.
All right. So the question, as always, we go 5-figure players on DraftKings: Westbrook, Anthony Davis, James Harden. Who's the one that you are most confident in building around as of publishing of this podcast?
Yeah, it's gonna be Harden until he proves me otherwise. But like I said, man, Davis, not to cop out here, Davis is in a really, really favorable spot too. I'll be sure to have some of him as well. Not to cop out, but hey, how do you not?
And that's going to do it. At Lofty_D on Twitter, LOUGHY_D, at Dan Strafford for myself, and of course at Osmo_com. You can check out Osmo.com for 1 week for free with the promo code EarlyBird. You'll see that over there on YouTube. Hit the like button, leave comments over on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and leave a comment over there as well. Dave and I are with you typically Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You get Adam and EMAC Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And Happy New Year. Hope everybody enjoys their festivities. Remember, be smart. Don't do anything stupid. Well, at least illegal. Well, do whatever you want, but just don't drive. That is the final say I have. That do whatever you want. Just don't get behind the wheel. Enjoy it and enjoy your time heading into 2019. Crazy times that we've already hit 2019 here. So Happy New Year. We'll be back with you on the other side. EMAC and Adam, then Dave and I back with you on Wednesday morning. Best of luck on this 5-game slate. You've been listening to the DFS Early Bird presented by Osmo.com.